Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mummy and Megan Saya from Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to episode 325 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is Jackson. Glad to be with you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe and healthy. For those of you in the areas of the wildfires, oh my gosh, sounds like an incredible situation. Please do stay healthy and safe as well. It has been another unprecedented week in the bar exam, and we're going to break it all down for you in this week's episode of our podcast. My co-host, Megan Saya, will be joining me in a few minutes. We'll look at what's been going on around the country and also talking a little bit about what we see happening in this very critical period leading up to the October 5th and 6th Plan B exams and the Florida exam on October 13th, and then also looking ahead into 2021 and what some of these changes and developments may mean for bar takers coming up in that period. So I hope you'll stick around for that discussion. If this is your first time on the podcast, we want to welcome you. We're glad you found us. We do these podcast episodes in both audio and video format. If you'd like to watch today's episode, you can go to celebrationbarreview.com/325. That's the episode number. And if you'd like to listen to your podcast, you can do that on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, radio.com, Spotify, just about any place that podcasts are syndicated. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the information. And we'll come to you each week about this same time to update you on what's going on around the bar exam world. Now, I want to let you know before we jump into today's update about a very special free training webinar that we've been providing back since the pandemic started back in March. And the title of this webinar is Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam, Why You Should Ignore the Crowds and the Fear. We recognize that one of the real questions that people have at this point is, should I sit out? Should I jump in? What exam should I be taking? How should I be preparing? And we've got the answers for you in this free training webinar. During this 1-hour session, I'm going to walk through the strategy that we've been employing. I'm going to give you a sense of what we think is going on in the exam, what the new normal looks like. And by the way, our predictions back in March about what the exams would look like have turned out to be pretty accurate as we got the first set of results in this last week, and you'll hear more about that in a few minutes. But this webinar is constantly being updated to tell you the latest on what's going on, and then I jump on at the end to do a live Q&A to answer any questions that you might have specifically about your jurisdiction or your circumstance, and to make sure that we're giving you the latest and most useful information for you. If you've been struggling with whether or not to take the bar exam, or when to take it, or where to take it, I think this webinar is going to be just what you are looking for, and it's completely free. To register, all you have to do is click on the link in the show notes, or you can go to our page at celebrationbarreview.com/now and get all the information there. And then we'll see you on this free training webinar. Don't forget, it's about an hour in length, and we do a live Q&A at the end. I think you'll find it really helpful. So if you've been at all wondering or conflicted or just concerned and confused, make sure you join us for Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam. All right. Well, now is the best time to tell you about what an unprecedented week it's been in the bar. And I'm joined by my co-host, Megan, and here's our rundown of the week. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome. It is Wednesday, September 9th. Hi, Megan. How are you?
Hi. Hanging in there. How are you?
All right. Good. Wow. This is the week, right, Megan, when we would have gotten Florida results in a normal bar exam year.
Yeah, it is crazy to think about that we are still very far away from quite a few exams. Yes, we should be well into the calm period of bar study, and we are not.
We are not there. We know that we were just talking about before we went on. We know that this is tough for everybody. We really do. And so we're delighted that all of you are joining us. I wanted to just talk about this. Megan, you and I were talking before we got started about how tough this is on people emotionally, right? It's really wearing on students. Is that your experience with your students that you're mentoring?
Oh, I mean, yeah, 100%. Everybody is going through this is a lot. It's not supposed to look like this. You're not supposed to be studying this intensely and on and off and on and off as things kept getting moved around and dates kept getting pushed back. This is it's been very difficult and a lot of uncertainty. And then, obviously in the middle of a ton of upheaval and uncertainty and fear, just in regular life, day-to-day life, it's just a lot for everyone to be dealing with. And so we don't want you to be dealing with it alone.
Yeah. And so a couple of months ago, I completed work on what I really think of as the best webinar I've ever done. And I've done a lot of webinars, and I got a lot of them I really like. But the master class called Abundance for Bar Study is a 90-minute on-demand class that focuses on mindset and how to control your mind and your approach as you are working and studying. We did this and have had a number of our students go through it. I've never gotten such positive response across the board from people, and it's available to you. I cannot encourage you enough to sign up for this. You watch it at your own convenience, and then it goes in your permanent library. We have a private Facebook group just for people that have been through that master class. There's an 18-page PDF workbook for participants. You will not regret going through it. I absolutely assure you. And if you are at all struggling with this stress and tension and anxiety and frustration, the 90 minutes you invest in this class will make a world of difference. And I've heard from people that went through this a month ago in the master class who said, if it wasn't for that class, I think I might be losing my mind right now. So please give yourself that chance. I hope that you do that. Happening in the bar exam world?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk first about, I think this is really interesting, about scores. So we heard pretty quickly after the July exams happened, the NCBE said that they had an increase in MBE scores. So obviously the MBE gets graded, practically instantaneously. And so they knew right away that there was a higher MBE pass rate and higher MBE scores than we would normally see on the July exam. Well, now we have a couple of states who their full results have been released. And what's really interesting is that we're seeing the same trend. So North Dakota, they took an in-person July 2020 exam, and they had an overall 76% pass rate. A year ago, their July 2019 pass rate was 73%. So that's a pretty significant jump from nothing else should have changed. Nothing was different.
That was a full bar exam. That was a regular exam with 200 question MBE. Yeah.
Yep. 2 days. Right. The exact same thing. So now then in Indiana, Indiana did they did the online email exam. So theirs they didn't have the MBE component. They just did the writing pieces. They were emailed to people, and then people filled it out and emailed it back that same day. So, but I just find this really fascinating. So they did this in August. So I'm going to compare the August 2020 to the July 2019. Okay. Cause that's kind of the closest. So we don't want to compare, don't compare July to February because it tends to be a different group of people taking it, but we'll compare the August to the July. So their overall pass rate in August of 2020 was 74% compared to 65% a year ago. That is astounding. And then let me tell you this is, to me, I am just completely blown away by this. Their overall pass rate for repeat takers, so just, what most of you guys would be repeat takers. In July 2019, it was 23% of repeat takers passed. In August 2020, it was 53%. So that is a gigantic leap. And Jackson, if you want to talk about this, because I know this really tracks with what you have been saying. I know a lot of people signed up for the course because they saw your discussions about, this is the time to take the bar exam. What was that?
March.
Yeah, exactly. March.
Ancient history, right?
Talking about this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Megan. This number is massive, and I think it's the leading edge of what we're going to see. Back in March, when we put together Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam webinar, the theory of the case was fewer people should end up probably take the exam overall, that we've got some hot spots like California where we've got a lot more people having signed up because it went online, but overall the number is going to be lower. We've seen that so far. And the second theory of the case was scores would go up. A lot of the first-time takers would jump out. There would be more generous grading. We didn't necessarily anticipate passing score numbers would be lowered, although they have been in 4 or 5 states. But we presumed that there would be more repeat bar takers passing. There would just be more seats available for repeat bar takers. And I got some pushback. I mean, in social media, I had some people that said, well, that's just, silly. That isn't going to happen. Of course it won't happen because Barbary says it won't happen. Really? But here's the first wave of actual empirical data, and it seems to indicate that, in fact, that's exactly what's happening. And that's good news. Now, there is a very real implication of this that I think, I know you and I are going to get to later in questions, of students still waiting for their September 30th, October 5th, October 13th exams, who are saying, should I waive off? There's just so much craziness and things going on. Look, based on these numbers, stay the course, stay in and take the exam. It is still, I think, the best opportunity to pass that we've seen in years. And I think these numbers give credence to that. I think it's also significant, and I'm interested in your take on this, Indiana, which went to the email open book exam. Wow, what a difference that made, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in Georgia, don't defer. I mean, take the Georgia open book exam, for God's sake. If some of these other exams switch to open book, which I think is still possible, even with this late date, based on ExamSoft, we're going to talk about that. Stay in, take the exam, because that seems to be one of the big takeaways, certainly in Indiana. But overall, I think all of these numbers tell us that it's going to be a better season for those people that can sit for the exam. And I think it's also significant that Indiana didn't use the MBE. Mm-hmm. So when we look at this early sets of scores coming out around the country, and I think North Carolina had their results and they were better as well. When we're looking at all of these things, it tells me that in spite of all of the craziness, and there is plenty of that the people who are taking and sitting for the exams are getting a better read, a better shake, and ultimately tells me it's not about how much law you know, because that wasn't the issue in Indiana at all. So it's really fascinating stuff, isn't it? I mean, these are just returns, but they still tell us something.
Right. I mean, and you can also see with the data from Indiana that, they released the numbers of students who sat for it, first-time takers versus everyone else. And the number of first-time takers went down and the number of repeat bar takers shot up. I mean, it was significant. I think it was like more than 70 more. So they went from under 100 first-time takers a year ago to almost 170. Yeah. This time. And so despite that, you would almost think, right, you'd almost look at that and think, well, I bet the pass rate went down, right? Because the number of first-time takers went up and the opposite. The number of first-time takers went down and the number of repeat takers went up. But in fact, it was the opposite. Even with so many more repeat takers taking it as a higher proportion of the exam than last year, the pass rate still the overall pass rate significantly jumped up, and the repeat taker pass rate went up 30%, points, 30 percentage points. It's gigantic. So, well,
we never see those kinds of changes. I mean,
right.
we see 2, 3, 4% changes typically. When we see 30%, that is a earth-shattering event.
Yeah.
So there is definitely something different happening out here, and you got to believe that bar examiners around the country are looking at these numbers as we're looking at them, saying, "Wow, that's a big change. Online exams make a difference. Open book exams make a difference. Having these first-time takers out of the pool make a difference." Some bar takers or bar examiners, I think, are going to embrace that. Some are going to, like New York, probably push away and say, we don't want that group of people taking our exam. And I guess I would say to all of you who are taking the exams in 2021, you should not expect a calm, placid, predictable season, because I think that there will be reactions to these results, both by applicants getting their individual results, but also by bar examiners and state judiciary systems trying to figure out what this means for their bar. And I think that's going to play out in real time. It's going to be really extraordinary. I mean, I don't know what other word to put to it.
Yeah. Yes, our favorite 2020 word, unprecedented. Everything is unprecedented. Absolutely everything. I say as the skies outside my window have been orange for, 5 days with all and we're nowhere near the fires in California, but there are just so many fires that our air quality is.
Yeah, and let me just say for the California students in particular, but anybody on the West Coast in these fire regions, I've gotten a couple of photos actually from students in the last couple of days where literally I see those orange skies. How do you, and one of the questions was, how do you study and focus in view of all that? Well, you don't. You take care of your health and safety and your family first, obviously, and get to someplace safe, and then you start your studying. And, the bar exam will still be here. Let's hope your home and your community are still standing as well. But, it's just, what else can happen? I mean, it's just unbelievable what all these things are going on. And so you guys are heroes for taking the bar exam in the midst of all of this. I got to tell you, you have not only my respect, but just admiration and awe that you're getting through all of this. I mean, I've taught the bar exam through hurricanes, and I thought that was pretty heroic, but I'm not sure that it's anything compared to pandemics and social unrest and social justice and, forest fires and, the world going completely mad. So there you go.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk briefly. I wanted to bring this up. It's specifically for Georgia students, but I think it's applicable to other students as well. And that's that the Georgia director of the Office of Bar Admissions said in a Q&A that if October, they don't have a backup plan. So if October doesn't work, so if there's concerns or issues with ExamSoft, that's probably going to be it. So they will do February. And I think it's important to note that that's probably the case at this point. We're getting kind of down to the wire. It's probably going to be the case in most jurisdictions who haven't announced a backup plan yet. I know, Jackson, that Florida had said they were going to announce a backup plan. I don't believe they haven't. So who knows? We're not sure with that plan.
You know what I think happened in Florida? I think after the chief judge put out what I'm calling the hostage video, it was not well received. I mean, generally speaking, people said, "What, are you kidding me?" And then there was the petition to the Florida court to say you should offer, practice waiver. And the court said, in spite of everything that the Chief Justice said, no, we're not going to do anything of the sort. You still have to take the bar exam. But we're sure that there'll be members of the Florida bar that will hire you, even though they can't bill for your time. But we're going to set up a health counseling, mental counseling program for you because, you would have gotten your results this week, but we haven't even taken the exam yet. And you have to look at all of that and say, really, what are you guys doing? I mean, how much more, I think it was above the law that called it hubris this week. How much hubris does it take to run these bar exams? And Florida, which I think is among the most aggressive, antagonistic, non-applicant friendly jurisdictions, although New York's coming up the ladder quickly. I think that Florida, said, well, we're going to tell you what our backup plan is, but they don't have a backup plan. And so here we are on the fourth date that they've set. I still think, this is just me, we'll see what happens. I still think if ExamSoft goes south on these stress tests that they're trying to run, that Florida's going to have to make a decision about going to an open book exam. And I am still thinking that is Florida's plan B. And they just don't want to announce it because they don't want the pressure of having to just go there now. Does that make sense? That they keep it in their back pocket?
Yeah, definitely. I think nobody wants to say that their backup plan is open book, because the second you put that on the table, you're going to have people saying, well, why not just make it open book today? So, yeah.
And they don't want the genie's out of the bottle, right? And then you're stuck with what Georgia's got, which is, well, if open book doesn't work, what do you do then? And then the Georgia bar examiners say, well, then we just quit. We just give up. Exactly. Do we want to talk about ExamSoft here? Is this the time to talk about it?
Yeah, let's talk about ExamSoft.
So ExamSoft is an interesting company. They're called Exemplify now. Is that their newest, latest iteration? I think it's
the product. I think that under
it's a product of ExamSoft. Yes, I don't know. It's a trademark product, copyrighted product. I don't know. And when they start advertising on Pod Save America, I guess we'll know. But this is a company that is in way, way, way over their head. They are putting up a brave front, and they're talking about how many hundreds of thousands of exams they have taken and administered for other industries over the years, but there has never been anything like this in the bar exam. And I applaud their courage. I wonder about their wisdom. And I definitely, if I were a bar examiner right now, I would not be sleeping well at night, because ExamSoft has not demonstrated yet any capacity to protect the work. The one try they got hacked. We've talked about that in Michigan. And so what is going on, I guess, right now is that several bar examiners in different states are trying to get this practice testing done in a way that will put some stress on the system, right? You want to talk a little bit about that stress test idea?
Yeah, so the problem was that ExamSoft released the software on September 1st, but then in most jurisdictions, there was just sort of an open-ended, you need to, or in some we just suggest, but that you go in and do this sort of practice piece test at some point before X date. The problem with that is that it's not putting what's called a stress test on ExamSoft. So ExamSoft is perfectly capable of handling people trickling in and out of their program over the next couple weeks. Yeah. That's not a problem. The problem that people are rightfully, I think, concerned about, because it has not yet been proven that they can actually do it. Hopefully they can, but they haven't proven that they can do it, is to say, well, what happens when you get tens of thousands of people taking it live with the AI, with the webcams and, all this stuff, and trying to submit their answers all simultaneously. So yes, in some jurisdictions, there's formal and informal attempts to get the tests going where it's okay, let's see if we can get 1,000 people to all do it at once. It's certainly nothing like in California, how many thousands of people are signed up to take this?
12,000. Yeah.
So it's nothing like that, but it's something. So yeah, it's just a very much an open question. We've talked about, we're sure that's why Florida picked a date after October 5th and 6th for their exam, because basically this gives them, it was smart. It gives them an out. Hey, we're going to see what happens on October 5th and 6th, and then we will know much better what we can handle then. But yeah, it's just kind of a mess right now, to be honest.
And it's the Wild West, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you and I were talking about this before we went on live today. In some jurisdictions, ExamSoft will record what you do on your camera, and then they'll run it back through AI afterwards to check. In other jurisdictions, they're going to be live monitors, proctors watching on the camera. And so that's different. Some jurisdictions are going to release all of their questions at one time when you get your password. Others are going to make you go on and off and on and off. And when you put all of these different permutations together, then ExamSoft has to be very, very nimble to incorporate all of that, and to take the stress of all of those people not only pulling down their questions, but uploading, hours worth of work. And this has been, you remember a couple of years ago when ExamSoft went down and people couldn't upload their answers that night, and it was, oh my God, I got texts all night long. It was unbelievable. And that was a handful, right? So now you go from a handful to tens of thousands of people. And I'm not trying to make anybody crazy here. I just want you to recognize that we are in unprecedented land here, and nobody knows, including ExamSoft, whether or not they can actually do this. And we probably, unless they get a legitimate stress test somewhere, with enough thousands of people at the same time, we won't know until October 5th and 6th, which is a bit late in the game.
Right.
So I think that the best advice that we can offer anyone is make sure you're watching all of the information from your bar examiners and from ExamSoft. For God's sake, please open your emails. Please look at your emails. Please check your spam email boxes every day, multiple times a day. I'm stunned at how many people just don't ever look at their spam mail, and the important stuff goes there. But look at that stuff, watch it, stay informed about what's going on, take the practice tests if they're offered in your jurisdiction, and be prepared for whatever's going to go on. Know what the procedures are. It's sort of like knowing how to vote. Know how to get your exams, know what number to call, what the rules are about whether you can have a phone or not have a phone, or how that can go. Be sure that you have really looked at the rules in your jurisdiction about what the AI camera or the proctor is going to see and what's acceptable and not acceptable. And then just lock down that stuff, just like you would have locked down how to get to the test location before, and getting your laptop there and doing all the things you had to do that way. It's just a different set of rules here, but you got to be prepared the same way, right?
That's a question about repeat bar takers. So will repeat bar takers and individuals who have graduated from law schools more than 3 years ago be weeded out of the current bar exam taking process over a majority of jurisdictions? So basically like what New York is doing right now, where they're weeding out people who graduated several years ago and multiple time repeat takers, they're weeding them out. Are we anticipating that happening with other jurisdictions?
I am not. I think what New York is doing is a one-off. I think that they are responding weirdly, and I really don't know why. I mean, New York is a blue state that's got a huge immigrant population, a huge number of foreign attorneys, and I don't know where this is coming from. It is a weird phenomenon in my mind, because I think it's really counter to the culture of the state of New York. We don't see this happening in California, although California just set their bar score so high that they, created a de facto, but they said you can take it as often as you want. Florida says you can take it as often as you want. I mean, these are, states that you would expect to be more difficult in this regard have been less. I cannot get at the underlying reason why the New York bar examiners decided to use COVID-19 for cover and then make such a dramatic change in their applicant pool process. And I suspect that because there's so many other things going on, it's just escaped attention, and no one's really put a focus on it, a spotlight on it. If and when that spotlight comes up, I think there's going to be some explaining to do, and I'm curious to see what that is. But I don't get any trend anywhere else in the country that any other bar is doing that. In fact, we have some bar jurisdictions like Washington State that said, come on in, right? Anybody. Yeah. And we're seeing other jurisdictions that are trying hard to bring other people in. Now, sometimes it's more for show than for reality. Remember way back when all this started with the dates and the changes, and Utah was the first state to say, we're going to offer a practice waiver, right? I read an article this week. Do you know how many students actually got to use the practice waiver in Utah?
Oh, how many? Like 3?
3.
There we go. I got it.
3. That was it.
Well, remember we said that when they came out with the practice waiver. That's exactly what we said. I said, I think you're going to have a hard time finding people who can meet these criteria, right? Of being this new graduate who can't sit for the bar, but has a job where they're willing to take them on, even though they're not having passed the bar yet, and they won't be able to bill them out as a full attorney, and all these things. So, I'm not surprised.
Got 3 people on that program. Maybe New York said, "Hey, that's a great idea. Let's follow that and see if we can reduce it." New York loses a lot of attorneys to Florida. You would think New York would want to get more attorneys. I don't know. So I think the ultimate answer is, don't be discouraged. I know it's easy to feel that way. Don't give up. And I don't think it's a trend. We don't see it anywhere really in depth. We certainly don't see it. I mean, Texas has a 5 exam limit, but they've had that for years. Florida has no limit. California has no limit. A lot of big states have no limits. So, there you go.
All right. So this is a question that we've been getting a lot of variation of this week. I think once we hit within the 30-day window for the October exam, we're seeing more of this. Someone asked, I'm feeling anxious about the October exam and debating whether to reapply for February instead. What do you think I should do?
Well, as we talked about at the very beginning of the webinar today, when we see these early pass rate results, they are very encouraging, and they make me believe that unless you are holding on by a fingernail, financially, emotionally, physically, that you should sit for the exam. I have been saying throughout this process that I think anyone taking the exams, certainly in this Plan B October 5th, or now the Florida exam on October 13th, you're playing with house money. There is no real downside. It's shorter exams. It's less of an MBE. There are fewer people taking the exam generally. The curve is going to be more gracious. The passing scores in a lot of jurisdictions have been reduced. There's a lot of things going on. Reciprocity is growing. It's not the same as score portability, but man, that reciprocity list is something, isn't it? I mean, it just keeps sort of expanding and exponentially growing. And so there are real opportunities there. And I talk about in the webinar that I do, Harriet Beecher Stowe says, when things are looking their worst and it seems like it just couldn't get any worse, that is the time the tide will turn. And that's when you need to hold on just a moment longer. I would say that is good advice for bar takers right now. Hold on just a moment longer. We're 30 to maybe 45 days away from your exam. And though it feels like forever, because it has been, it is important to stay the course, to get through it if you can. And that would be my take. I mean, what's your feeling about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is very individualized. You are the best judge for yourself of what your reasons are for feeling like you need to defer. I know we've talked about a million times, but I'll say it again. We don't have any penalties for anybody who does defer, and you don't have to give us a reason. Like, it's just, you just say, I'm going to defer. That's fine. There's nothing, we have no skin in the game in terms of when you take the exam. So don't feel, any pressure either way from us. I think it really is you've got to look at yourself and think, critically, what is my rationale for feeling like I need to defer? Am I procrastinating? I know that can happen with all this stuff happening. I think that's a reason why we're seeing fewer people taking the exam. I will tell you the truth, color me skeptical that if California has 12,000 people registered for the online exam, I would be shocked if anywhere near that number actually took it. I'm not saying it's going to be a tiny number. California has so many people, but I can pretty much promise you that thousands of people probably are going to wake up that morning and go, I don't think I'm going to turn on my laptop today. So, it's be honest with yourself about, am I just kind of feeling like this general malaise and stress about life right now, and so it feels easier to push this off? Or do I really feel like I've got good reasons for why I'll be in a better place to take it in February?
Now, one of the things I think we have to be honest about here, some of these jurisdictions are not going to get results out in time for you to pivot into a February 2021 exam. So for some of you, it may be results and then July 2021. It's still the same process, but I don't see how California, for example, they're going to get results out. What are they saying now? January of 2021?
Yeah, January 29th. Yes.
January 29th? Holy cow. So 3 weeks before the bar exam.
Yeah,
well, that's not going to happen. Oh. So, I mean, and a lot of jurisdictions just aren't even telling anyone when they are going to get their results out. It's just, we'll do it when we can do it, as soon as we can. Yeah. So I think I think if you're sitting for this set of fall exams, you should plan on passing. If you don't pass, you should just accept the fact that you're almost certainly going to take the exam in July and not in February, which means the February exam, I don't even know what to tell you about the
one step at a time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We had some requests for the Wonder Woman story. So you tell the Wonder Woman story. I might have to add a couple questions, but go. All right.
The quick version. Here's why Wonder Woman in the movie comes into the bunker in front of no man's land, and all the soldiers have set up. They've been there. The Germans are on the other side, and they've been there for a year, and it's miserable, but they've turned it into their version of home, right? They have Christmas pictures, and they've decorated their bunker. And they're okay with their unhappiness. And Wonder Woman is so determined, she has to get across no man's land to get to her goal, that she says, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to go. And she doesn't know at that point in the movie that she's invincible, right? I mean, she just gets up there, she climbs the ladder without anybody's approval, and she starts running, and bing, 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 the bolts are coming at her. And everyone gets excited and starts to follow her across. And of course, she makes it across, and she destroys the Germans' munitions. Now, the point of the story is that for a lot of bar takers, you're in a bunker right now. You've been in this bunker for a really long time, and it's really miserable, but you're pretty happy being miserable because you've been there so long. You have to have enough of a motivation to get up out of the bunker on October 5th and turn on your computer. You have to want to do this so badly that you're willing to take the risk of all of the craziness and the hardships and the nutty stuff that's going to happen. And that's why I think it's so important that you have a big why, a big reason for why you're doing this. And if you've got that big why and determination, that's what gets you out of the bunker. Anyway, that's the Wonder Woman story.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the increase in scaled score. What does the increase in scaled score by the NCBE mean?
Well, what it means is that when they administered the tests on July 28th and 29th, that went to about, 22 states, something like that, but a relatively small number of people.
Right, yeah.
But the NCBE that writes the test actually scores the test, and they compile the statistics. They have those results within about 7 to 10 days after the exam. And when they do that, they then attach a scale. They compare that test to a series of standard tests when they first gave the MBE. And they equate for the fact that there are only 175 questions that count now versus back then when 200 questions counted. And they add a certain number of points to your raw score. Once they're done with that equating process, then they look at the range of scores and they say, what does that look like compared to other July bar exams? And that number is 5 points higher than it was in July of 2019. That's what we expected was going to happen. We thought that there would be better scores because a lot of people would just be out of the pool. And so you've got people that were more prepared and ready to go in and take the exam. In general, July tests score better than February tests on the multi-state because you have a different mix of people. That's probably been true even to this modified extent now. Here's what it doesn't mean, though. Does not mean the MBE got easier. Doesn't mean the MBE changed. Doesn't mean that anything else happened in that regard. Doesn't mean that Barbary and Kaplan figured out how to teach the MBE. Okay, that is not what happened. What happened was you have a very small sample size, and in that very small sample size, the numbers went up for that exam. Now, we're not going to give any more full-length exams after today or tomorrow and September 30th, but it's still a very small sample size. I mean, Texas is the only big state, and even there, I don't even know how many people are taking the exam. I don't think it's a lot. So all of the October exams are not MBEs. So that's all we're going to know about the multi-state. There's no scaling in the traditional sense that will come out of Plan B on October 5th and 6th. And of course, Florida isn't even doing a multi-state set of questions. So that's all the information that we're going to have. If you aren't taking the multi-state today or tomorrow or September 30th, doesn't matter to you one way or the other. And if you're taking the multi-state in February or taking the bar exam in 2021, I've got no idea what you're going to be taking. I mean, it's the multi-state in some form, I think, but for right now, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. I just wanted to end on this note. I thought this was a really good point someone made on, I think they put it on the Facebook page. They were going through crim law, multiple choice questions, and said, you know, the point of the question was what the defendant reasonably thought, and I thought incorrectly, but it was really my mind inferred choice B because I sort of misread the question. So lesson or takeaway, read carefully what's actually written and don't infer what's not actually written on the questions. And I thought that was just a good little piece of advice.
Yeah, it's great advice. And then don't try to analyze the answer choices. Just respond. You know, read carefully and then respond. I think sometimes people get confused and they think I mean read quickly and then spend all the time on the answer choices. It's exactly the opposite. I want you to read carefully through the problem, and then I want you to respond quickly. When you do that, you're going to get the best response. But I wanted to say I really appreciate the comments that people are putting up in the Facebook group. Been a lot of great responses, a lot of great support that many of you have put in for people who are struggling at different times with different things. I would love to see more and more of you post your mind maps that you're doing, not the ones you're editing of mine, but your own mind maps. I would love to see the things that you're doing there. I think the support that you give each other as a community, particularly over this next period of 40 some days, is going to be more important than it's ever been before. We've got about 500 people in that Facebook group, which is pretty amazing. And it also includes a lot of former successful students who are remarkable resources and tend to be the biggest supporters of everybody that's in there. Please use that resource. If you haven't signed up for the Facebook group, I know Facebook makes my skin crawl. But this Facebook group is a really good tool to use, and it's private, and I really would encourage you to participate in it.
Great. Yep. So that's it for this week. I know
Wow.
it was a lot. Chin up, everybody. We know this is really hard. We know there's so much going on, and you guys are really champs. You're hanging in there. Use the group coaching, like talking, Jackson saying there's lots of past successful CBR students on the Facebook group. Well, literally everyone. I'm a past successful Celebration Bar Review student. Miriam is, like, all, our group coaches are.
Ellen, yeah.
June, because of course June did not go to law school and is not an attorney, but we love her for that.
She's the smartest person in the room.
Exactly. Yeah. So, it's that, like, we're this support system of, we all literally have been in your shoes of, I guess not literally in your shoes, but figuratively, we have been in your shoes. We have used Celebration Bar Review, and we've passed the bar exam with it, and we're still around because we really believe in the mission and the work that Celebration Bar Review does. So yeah, take advantage of that. All those resources are free for you, so use them for sure.
Yeah, definitely want to say that. Thank you, Megan. This is certainly unprecedented, but also just extraordinary what it's doing all the way around for you guys, for us, for everybody. So we are so thankful and appreciative of the kindness that many of you express to us on a regular basis. And, we'll be back next Wednesday. I don't know that we'll have a whole lot more results out. We may have a handful. We certainly will have those people having finished the Texas and a couple of other exams this week, but we'll be looking towards those September 30th and then really aiming for the October exams. So that's where our focus will be, and look forward to great studies for everybody. Please stay safe, stay healthy, stay out of the way of the fires if you're on the West Coast, and we will gather again next week. All right? So
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good week.
Well, it certainly was an unprecedented week, wasn't it? And I hope that rundown was helpful for all of you. I just want to remind you before we sign off again about our free training webinar. It's called Now is the Best Time to Take Your Bar Exam. You can register by clicking on the link on the show notes or going to celebrationbarreview.com/now and find out why this is the best time to take the bar. Get the answers to the questions that you've been asking about when and where and how to take the bar exam, and we'll look forward to seeing you on that special free training session. All right, well, I hope everybody stays well and safe and happy, and your studies continue to go well, and we will see you next week right back here along the Extra Mile.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.